Hey, what's going on everybody? On today's project, I'm going to show you how I built this DIY sectional sofa. At least one of us really likes it. That's you. So this sectional is broken up into two components. So one is the first large couch, and the second piece is the smaller sectional L. And this video is going to show you how to build both of those, but I also have a very detailed plan set that I put together that's going to show everything at a greater level of detail, and I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to download that. So let's start off by showing you how to build the large sectional sofa. So the first thing we're going to do is build the box frame, and what you're going to want to do is cut out 6 smaller 22.5-inch pieces and 2 8-foot 4-inch pieces. And then what you're going to want to use is a pocket hole jig, and I'll have a link to the description for the one I use, but this is just going to make your connections to the box frame much cleaner. So highly recommend you pick up one of these pocket hole jigs. Again, link in the description. It's affiliate if you want to help my channel out. Once you have your 6 smaller pieces, you're going to go ahead and attach it to the longer 8-foot 4-inch piece on both sides. And again, I'm using 2.5-inch exterior rated screws for both of those. So once I had the first one done, I positioned it on top of the other 8-foot 4-inch piece. I used a little bit of wood glue in a few locations, and you can feel free to do the same if you would like, just to make your connections a little bit stronger. And again, it's the 2 screws for each pocket hole connection. And again, on the other side, using some glue and then screwing in the 2.5-inch exterior rated screws, one there and then the other one there. So at this point, we have the overall frame constructed, and now I'm taking the rest of my 22.5-inch pieces and using them as braces on the inside of the overall frame. Again, I'm using a little bit of wood glue, exterior rated, and then screwing in the 2.5-inch exterior rated screws on both ends in the pocket hole penetration. So I'm measuring in between the frame to make sure that these are evenly distributed and screwing them in. One thing I will note is there's a couple things I would have changed about this design if I was going to do it again today. So I would suggest that you watch this all the way through to the end, and I'll highlight those. For example, one of the changes I made here is I put 2 additional braces in the middle and added a support leg. Since this couch is actually really long, I wanted the additional support. Now we have the frame all constructed, it's time to move over to the arms. So 2 of these arms are going to need to be constructed identically, and here are the dimensions you saw in the lower right hand corner, and we're going to go ahead and cut everything to those dimensions and then start screwing it together. As you're seeing here, I'm working on the bottom piece, and then I'm attaching the 2 longer vertical pieces on top of that. Next up, I'm measuring and I'm going to install the blocking that's going to go in between the 2 vertical pieces. These pieces are 2 foot 5 inches in length, and they're going to go right in the middle there as you're seeing, and they're going to be attached with pocket screws. And what these are going to do is they're going to allow us to attach the box frame to this vertical support piece in the middle, and we're going to screw all that together as you'll see later on. So this is the piece I'm referring to. I'm using some clamps to make sure that it's perfectly in place, and then with my pre-drilled pocket holes, I'm screwing it in, 2 on each side. Again, they're 2.5-inch exterior rated, and you're going to see this for pretty much all of the screw-ins. So here I am putting together the other arm. It's going to be identical except for this last piece. You're going to mount it on the opposite side so that you can attach the frame to it. So here they are next to each other, and at this point it's time to install the box frame to the legs. Now the way I did this is I used a lot of clamps to make sure it was level. I checked to make sure it was flush both in the front and at the top there, so when I install the decking boards later it'll all be uniform. And then here I am just driving a bunch of screws in to connect the box frame to the arm. Here I am moving on to the other side, again using a clamp and checking that everything is flush and uniform and fixing it like that. And now we're ready to install the decking boards. So for this larger couch, you're gonna need 5 8-foot 4-inch decking boards. So I measured and I cut all those at once, and then I got the first piece flush with the front of the couch. And this is pretty important, so I used clamps to make sure I was perfectly happy with it all the way across, and then I screwed it in. Then, using spacers as I show in the plan, you'll go ahead and screw all the decking boards together, and you'll see on the back end here, you're gonna have one 2x4 that's uncovered, and that's gonna be important for your sloped backrest later on. So here I am installing the 8-foot 11-inch backboard. I went and I cut that obviously to length, and then clamped it in place, and then screwed it in from below so that we didn't have any exposed screws. So the next part is pretty tricky, and I basically created a template board. But what I found was the length was about 1 foot 8 inches, and then you're gonna need a 12.9 degree angle mitered on both ends so that it sits flush. So here's the template that I found and I used, and once I cut it and I was happy with it, I put it in place. And once it looked good with the angles, I went and I recreated that for all of the rest. So definitely check out the plan if you want to see that in more detail. But here I am using the template to mark all of the backrest boards and then cutting them all at once. You'll notice that I have some 2x6s just because I built all of this with scrap 2x4 and 2x6 pressure treated lumber, but in my plans I just show it with 2x4s. So then you're going to take 2 screws at the bottom and at the top, and you're going to attach all of the backrest pieces to the bottom and the top. So at this point, we've constructed the large part of the sectional. So pat yourself on the back, and now let's move over to the smaller perpendicular portion of the sectional. Now this smaller part of the sectional is almost identical to the large part, so check out the plan if you want to see all the dimensions and detailed step by step. But again, you're going to build an armrest that's identical to the other one, and then you're going to just do one modification on the other armrest because obviously that part does not have an armrest. So here I am showing you how I attach the top bar, and then I cut all of the decking boards to length just like we did for the larger sectional. At this point, I wanted just to explain that I used some leftover pressure treated 2x4s for this. It was all scrap lumber, but you could also do this with cedar. Cedar's probably your best bet, and you could also just grab some pine, build it the same way, and then just apply a waterproofing coating to it later on. So here I am just going back and doing the backrest here, using my template again and cutting it to the angle, and then installing it the same way, which is 2 screws on the bottom and 2 screws at the top. So because I used scrap lumber that had been in storage, it was in desperate need of a power wash. So I went and I power washed both parts of the sectional. And once it was power washed to my liking, I took some 120 grit sandpaper with my orbital sander, and I just sanded down all of the rough edges and gave myself a nice surface to apply my stain later on. So I use this white exterior stain by Behr, and I would not recommend this. After a couple months, it's already yellowing. So I would explore other options. I'll link it in the description just in case, but I would go with something different. Also, I don't love the color choice of white. In hindsight, I would have changed how I did that. So I went back here and just applied all of the stain to both couches, and then I used some polyester rope. I'll link it in the description, the kind I got from Amazon, and I used a staple gun to attach it at the bottom and then wrapped it all the way around and then stapled it in place again, and I used a little bit of flame to cauterize everything. And here's a quick look at where we are at so far with the couches, but before talking about cushions, I wanted to acknowledge that one of the drawbacks of having the slope backrest is you're kind of going to have this dead zone that's kind of awkward in the back corner, but once you put cushions on, it really wasn't a big deal in my opinion. So for cushions, I went with the IKEA cushions. They're the Frozen Duholmans, and they're expensive. I spent almost $500 on these cushions that you're seeing installed right now. So let's take a look at the final product and see if it was worth it. Hey everybody, if this video helped you out, I really would appreciate if you could drop a like down below and subscribe to my channel for more DIY projects like, how I built this fire table. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.